Hello everybody again. Who is new here, so welcome to Slevarna stage. I'm very glad that you find your way here, and we will just continue with the next speaker and the next talk. But before I shortly introduce you, I have to say that for us, this concept of working with journalists and support them somehow, share with them knowledge we gather also through you and with the help of all of you, we came with a new concept called Media Hub, and we would like to start very soon concept of co-working space for journalists. So also Inbar very well fits into this idea of working with journalists and working with information in maybe a new way. But what is important now is Inbar and her talk. She's a digital nomad and accomplished journalist in the field of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Working on a decentralized journalism platform which aims to expose political conflicts from within, facilitate dialogue and enable free speech, following the belief that decentralization has the ability to transform societies and empower individuals. So this is exactly what I was talking about. So the application, I completely forgot the name. It's called Salam Talk, so definitely follow the Salam Talk. And right now, Inbar, Preiss, stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. So 1 year ago, I moved back to my home country, Israel, for a few months. And there I met a friend. And my friend told me about a very simple experience that he had, which very much changed the way he saw reality. So what happened was that my friend heard about an incident called Molotov kite incident, and this is where people from Gaza sent flaming kites over to Israel and started some fires. My friend wanted to know what people in Gaza thought about this incident. Did they have the same opinions? Did everyone have the same opinion? Why was it done? So my friend looked through social media, went on Facebook, tried to find someone from Gaza that he could talk to. And in the end, he found Rami, and you'll meet Rami in a bit. But meanwhile, Rami and my friend Veer had a conversation, and they both learned a lot from that conversation. They found out things that they could have never found out about if they would just have kept to the news and to what they saw on television. And this was such an enriching experience that my friend thought everyone deserves to have the ability and the access to talk to someone who may be your political enemy or may be on the other side of the world, but sparks an interest in you to find out more. So that became the foundation on the project that I'm working on, and what I want to share with you today has been my own exploration of these themes, and it's just the beginning of the way, so let's see. Okay, so the way I see it, it's several aspects coming together. On one hand, we have politics, the conflict itself being political. Governments are involved, there's geography separating the people. On the other hand, we have media and communication being the filter through which people see reality, through which this is the main way people know about the other side or what is going on in the world. And this involves the news industry and the journalism industry. And what I find interesting is when you combine this with technology, what can today's most advanced technology offer these two fields, and the intersection between them I find can lead to interesting aspects, especially when you implement peer-to-peer networks and decentralization to allow for direct communication. So in this talk I want to focus about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And this is what most people know about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I know this because often when I say I'm from Israel, people suddenly become very concerned for my safety. I don't even live there. But this is a representation of reality. I'm not saying that these images are not true. They're very true and they reflect a very serious reality for many people. But they don't show the full picture of how people experience it. So, oh, too far. I want to introduce you to Rami, who is an engineer. He is also the freelance journalist, and he founded the youth committee in Gaza, and he's a very active activist in Palestine. And he goes through quite a difficult time being an activist and communicating with Israelis because his last arrest was this summer in July for 40 days, where he was heavily interrogated and stressed by Hamas to find out why he is collaborating with Israelis, who he's working for. But he keeps repeating that he's just working for himself, and every time he's released, he goes back to doing exactly what he was doing before. So let's see what he has to say.
The bloody pictures. The media just focus on the default pictures and default videos. Israeli soldiers, Palestinian fighters, protests in the borders, rockets, tanks, Netanyahu and Sinwar, Abu Mazen, there is no focus over any kind of other stories. There is no full picture of the reality of Gaza Strip and the reality of the relations between the Israelis and the Palestinians. For example, I had a chance to visit Jerusalem and Israel 3 times in the last 5 years ago. I saw in many clubs Palestinians and Israelis dancing with each other. I saw by my eyes that many Israelis and Palestinians, they are already neighbors and they are already friends and they are already in touch and listening to one music and they're sharing one house and they ate with the same food. But there is no media over this kind of things. Why? And because of this problem also we had many meetings, many online meetings with media like Ma'arif, Yadu'ot, Ynet, and Israelis media, asking them about why you are just focusing on this kind of pictures here in Gaza. Just, if the Israeli media from the right, they will reflect Gaza as, full of terrorists. If the media from the left, they just want to focus over Gaza, that Gaza needs humanitarian aids and they need money and food. No, it's not the media. There is no reality here in Gaza. We have, for example, we have many stories in Gaza here, away from the media.
Ignore my face. So what Rami was referring to, and part of what he said, is that the political influence of mainstream media in Israel tends to portray Gaza and their experiences in certain ways, depending on whether they're left-wing or right-wing. On one hand, having a centralized body in journalism is very, very important for verifying news, for fact-checking, for being an overseeing body to make sure that what is being presented is as accurate as possible. But on the other hand, it may have a role in distorting reality because there may be ulterior motives, such as political agendas or corporate agendas. What we see here is a graph of a recent study which shows, it's representative of American population, but I think the general trend can apply to the rest of the world. You see a decline in trust in the media as an institution. So we see the peak in the 70s, just around after the Watergate scandal. And we see the dip in 2016, just as Trump was getting into power and the fake news narratives were really proliferating. And I just want to show one more part of what Rami has to say about the corporate agendas of mainstream media.
A special case. There are a lot of conflicts in all over the world. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it's like the Southern, Northern Korean conflict. It's a conflict in the end. So the conflict has no nationality. But sometimes there are people need to make the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a special conflict because this kind of conflict make a lot of money, a lot of financial projects for some local and international persons. Maybe the conflict between India and Pakistan, there is no money maybe there. But the conflict between Israel and Palestine created very high money, very high dollars. No, we need to put the Israeli-Palestinian conflict with other conflicts. Because if you are looking at the world, you will find that there are other conflicts had solutions. Why the Palestinians and the Israelis with no solutions until now? Because it's a factory of money, of dollars.
So I just want to touch upon the difference between so-called war and peace journalism. And this is just to show that there is ethical practice of journalism, or at least a framework for ethical practice of journalism for conflict zones. And the essential difference is the focus on the action and violence, the sparking violence, which captures views, in contrast to showing a more solution-based approach. And rather than focusing on just government officials and elites being involved and making the big decisions, also show the grassroots movements and the individual efforts of regular people who are involved in the conflict, and this way show a bit more of a human perspective with more different kinds of perspectives than just the images of violence. And to add on to this, I think that being able to decentralize media and bring in peer-to-peer networks that allow for direct communication between people can allow us to, in a way, create a fuller image of a very complex reality. I have here a mosaic picture, mosaic art, because I think in the end of the day, reality is just a mosaic of human experience. Each of us have our own perspectives, and journalism is not a math equation. There is no absolute truth because everyone experiences a certain story from their own perspective. So I think this is something we need to keep in mind and let go of the notion that all news needs to be objective. In fact, on quite the contrary, you need to acknowledge your standpoint, know where you're coming from and where you stand in order to report in the most accurate way. The last point here I have is just the difference between homophilia and heterophilia. This is something that plays a role in social media, which has become a very important way of spreading news. We are shown through the algorithms, we are on Facebook and many other platforms, we're shown the things that are attractive to us, things we already like, things we already agree with, and this limits our view. On the other hand, maybe we should accept the other kinds of algorithm which shows us the other, exposes us to different realities. So this brings me to the next point of talking to your enemy. And if you're in a position of talking to your political enemy, you've already come a long way. But I want to examine what it is that makes it difficult and what we can gain from having these kinds of conversations, and how you can have a conversation with someone that you are conditioned to hate but actually don't know anything about, and what can we do to facilitate this process. This summer I had the opportunity to go to the West Bank with a journalism group, and there we had an encounter with the mayor of an area called Kalkilia, which is signified on the map. And he told us about his experience with Israelis. More specifically, he said that, in his words, in my translated words, we want to live together and coexist, referring to living with the Israelis and his experience as occupied West Bank. We want to live in dignity and be listened to. We pay the price of the politicians who create this reality of hatred and distrust between our nations. But there's no chance for dialogue, since the only Israelis we see are soldiers who humiliate and threaten us, or settlers who take our land. And this quote that I have written up here, I thought was particularly significant. When watching and reading the mainstream news, people are drinking from the pipes of the government, but you who came to listen to the people living here came to drink from the fresh water springs. So this is something that I hope can be shared and give people the opportunity to drink, fresh water. And Rami has a similar perspective.
I think it's not safe to talk directly about the Israeli-Palestinian case. But believe me that all of the Palestinians hearing us, looking for peace, dreaming about peace, but there is no leaders to present the peaceful voices here in Gaza Strip. Also Hamas and also the Palestinian factions. When the Palestinian factions talking about the truce for 10 years with the Israelis. I think truce agreement for 10 years, it's like peace agreement. So there is no difference. It's just a war between peace agreement or a truce agreement. So we are here working for the future. And also we are thinking how we can create good Palestinian leaders for the future, leading the civil society, leading the political field, in the same side, working with Israelis figures in civil society and political field to create a new kind of Netanyahu, a new kind of Lieberman, a new kind of Abu Mazen, a new kind of Livni, a new kind, and sit in one table and do something. It's because we will be in this conflict for infinity. For sure, no, we need to do something. We need the people here in Gaza or then in Israel to make them understand each other, respect each other.
So one way to ease the way to allowing Israelis and Palestinians to talk to each other directly and talk about the most pressing and difficult issues of occupation or of the conflict is to gamify this conversation. And the programmer that I'm working with is very inspired by this action, and he's very motivated to work on this. And this is the way he explains it. Why is it so important? This is because the only way to decentralize power is to gamify conflict resolution. All politics is gamified conflict resolution. When conflict resolution is gamified and given to the masses, power becomes decentralized, and eventually no one needs politicians, only good problem solvers. So this sounds a bit vague, but let me give you an example. There is Sapir Handelman, who is an Israeli academic and the chairman of Minds of Peace Initiative. And he is a negotiation moderator, and what he does is bring together Israelis and Palestinians from all the political spectrums, brings them together for 5 hours in one room, and they have to come up with a solution for the conflict. Simple as that. And what he goes to show is that, and I'll show you the video in a moment, but he's showing that, in fact, it is possible to reach an agreement, and in this way, put pressure on politicians which have not been doing this job very well. But it's very important to have rules to these conversations because things can easily slide down a slippery slope. The rules that he discusses are focusing on the future, not digging into the past, and no blaming and no insulting. And this is a very important role of the moderator. So if we could play the video.
I think it's impossible. It's going to be tough, but let's see what happens.
Let's negotiate.
We believe that the missing component in almost any peacemaking initiative is the involvement of the people. And our vision is to create a major public negotiating congress that can involve the people and press the leadership.
Hello.
Nice to meet you all. Everyone in the back of his heart knows that this conflict cannot continue forever. It's going to be catastrophe. So people came to listen, to make their opinions in order to find solution to the conflict.
So we would like Palestinians and Palestinian Authority will denounce any killing of innocent people.
Before that, we lived together. We lived together in peace. But the occupation is a big reason for this thing.
The environment in the checkpoints is inciting a lot of violence.
You won't be able to do it, so don't cheat me with that promise. I don't mean you personally.
You guys and us, and we speak about the future we want to build.
Let's be constructive. Let's be constructive.
It's a three-state, not in reality, Gaza, West Bank, Israel.
Okay,
Maybe three states, yes.
Do you want three states? No, I don't want. What do you mean with that joke? So what was the...
It's a three-state.
Reality is the three-state.
We have about 1 hour to reach agreement. We reached one agreement about trust-building measures, which was very, very difficult. And now we're debating what is the solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and it's not easy.
No one is going to leave Jerusalem, and perhaps if you will have time and to continue to go
Because
to
I believe Jerusalem is the micro solution.
Let's agree to disagree and talk about it later.
Now we are coming.
Everyone agree to the two-state solution? Yes. So we reach an agreement.
The negotiation is easy, but the difficult is how we can do that in future.
Both sides know it's kind of a game, so you're not really taking the responsibility of implementing the treaty that is agreed.
I believe it's important. It's important also for the youth to express themselves, to say ideas without being afraid.
This is, for example, the UN Security Council.
I like very much what we did today, but it just reminds me how much work we still need to do.
So I thought that was pretty cool, but there are some problems when having these kind of conversations. Some of the problems include if you just allow anyone to come in and discuss conflict resolution, is the lack of knowledge or the lack of education, the lack of language, or slipping into emotional stories of the people who are experiencing this, and it's not easy. So what Sapir is now busy doing is developing an AI to help moderate these kind of conversations and have an intelligent, digitally intelligent environment that can whip out the right information at the right time and keep people on the right track. So I think this is an interesting project that I'm curious to see how it will end up. And it's also an example of how bringing in technology can really bring these conversations to the next level. In addition to this, technology can bring in censorship resistance. For example, 1 in 5 protects communication from censorship and surveillance. It's a protocol that allows for intelligent routing to ensure that everything is highly private and anonymous, relaying through different networks. Privacy and anonymity are very important when in very sensitive political zones because there's high consequences to discussing certain things or being in contact with certain people. the peer-to-peer networks allow for total decentralization and not having a central authority to filter out information. This may be problematic in another way, but the power of having the multitude of information is also very important. Reputation systems can ensure the quality of information, just like we know from Uber and Airbnb. This way allows us to think twice about who we interact with based on their reviews. And open source information allows everyone to adapt their own technology to what their own needs. So if we have gamified conversations about certain issues, people can take and make their own versions for their own issues that they find important. And transparency is another important issue that decentralized technology is able to provide for these kind of sensitive topics. So what I see today, I'm happy to see that there are a lot of initiatives mushrooming around, responding to one of the greatest contemporary issues of our time, which is the way the media is going and the biases that we see in media. And today that everyone has a smartphone and can contribute their own information has its consequences. So I think that it's nice to see many different initiatives taking different approaches to media. What I find particularly important is the direct contact. As we've seen throughout this talk, it has changed lives. Just a direct conversation with someone on the other side of the border that you wouldn't have been able to have otherwise. I'm happy if we see more humanity and storytelling in the news and blur the lines between the consumption and production of news so that everyone is participating in a way. Focusing on grassroots initiatives to keep the balance between the focus on elites, which is often the case in mainstream industry of news, and to allow for dialogue and gamification. And also importantly, use technology to empower rather than to survey or censor information. And at the end of the day, I hope that communication and media can provide an enriching experience for people who use it. And yeah, so I'm just on the beginning of my way here, so there's many questions that are remained unanswered, many more issues to tackle. And if you're interested in the project, we always are looking for help, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to hear. Thank you.
Okay, so now is your time. So is there any question, audience? Okay.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I just, as an Israeli myself who doesn't live there, I just want to say it's amazing what you did here. It's bringing another perspective to Europe. I think it's essential because it's so horrible to see how one-sided this conversation were in the media, how biased major media outlet in regards to this conflict. And just, yeah, keep up the good job. It's amazing.
Thank you.
So if you need any help, I know how to reach you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. There was another question, so let's try one more time. Okay.
Yeah. Really great talk. I'm very proud of you, Inbar. I think it's very important that you pointed out, you know, one was kind of dealing with conflict, one was dealing with peace. That you had that slide.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to go back to that?
Yeah, please. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, this is was developed in the 1970s by a scholar called Johann Galtung, so it's quite a well-established field. But what was your question?
No, I just really liked it because it reminded me of this saying, it's like what you fight, you become, you know? And a lot of projects can get really into like fighting something, you know? But rather if you embrace peace, you come up with solutions, you know, like you've written it there, like solution orientated. Whereas the other one is just like, no, this is happening to me, no, this is happening to me. So I really like that.
Yeah, so the main difference is focusing on the eruption of violence rather than the ongoing effects on people's mentality and so on.
Has that like, what was it developed for?
Well, the Johann Galtung, he was a scholar in the field of conflict and conflict resolution, so this is his application in journalism.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Inbar.
Hi.
Thank you as well.
Thank you.
What I found really intriguing was you mentioned that there are some attempts to use AI to create some art environment for conflict resolution. Can you please expand on that? I mean, I would like to know if there are some projects that are already working on this, or I mean, what's any further info?
So I have very limited info. This is what I heard from Sapir, from the chairman of the Minds of Peace initiative. It's something he's working on, and that was the information he gave me. I can't really tell you much more. If you want, I can give you his details, and maybe you can ask him.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Hey, my question is about crypto technologies. You are a journalist, so are you using any? And if so, what are your complaints, if you have any?
About using cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, crypto technologies in general.
My complaints. I don't have too many complaints. I don't use it very daily. I guess it could be more user-friendly at times for people, but I don't have too many complaints, to be honest. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Yeah, here we go.
Maybe I would like to ask about the recommendations which you had at the end, how the journalism should look. You are saying that there should be kind of less focus on objectivity and more focus on storytelling. Like when I read mainstream media, sometimes like all the columnists or like with anything which is not direct reporting, I think there is sort of kind of too much of storytelling that they are pushing their own agenda either from one side or from the other side, and it's, from my perspective, it's kind of not readable, and I am more or less quitting of reading of this stuff at all.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think this is a way forward? Or maybe in your case, like Israel and Palestine, that may be like an edge case, but in general, why do you think you would do more storytelling and less kind of focus on objectivity?
I think maybe it's not a matter of eliminating the so-called objective facts, but I think that media platforms should put a bit more effort into not claiming objectivity too fast, not having the claim to saying that they're publishing the absolute and only truth, because just a matter of a few words or a choice of words already puts you in a position. Why did you say terrorist and not fighter? Why did you say this and that? So it's more in the nuance, which is what perhaps my problem is with claiming to objectivity. Perhaps saying that I'm not saying that the news should be all storytelling and so on, but I think that objectivity is something that we should reconsider when referring to. Hope that answers your question more or less.
Okay.
Yeah, many thanks for your talk. I want to ask you something that I was asked about when I talked about Israel, when I had a session about it. I was asked if there are any sources or media outlets that can be trusted regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and I want to ask you if like what's your opinion, if you think that there are any.
I'm looking for it as well, so we can stay in touch on that one. But I'm sure there are many initiatives out there. I can double check for a few that I've forgotten the name, but I don't have any off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for the talk. My question is related to implementation. How would you avoid your app, Salam Talk, becoming a shit show? So people just going on it to lie or spreading misinformation for the sake of like making the conflict resolve itself in one way, or just for like the sake of being a troll? Thanks.
So yeah, that is a very serious issue, and I don't have all the answers. As I said before, this is a work in progress. So I was hoping that the reputation system and reviewing system would be a strong incentive for people to provide good quality and marginalize the lower quality of information. But then again, this is a bit more complicated because people within the conflicts may have their own dispositions and agendas and emotional background. So if anyone knows about a clever way to verify news in these kind of decentralized environments, because the aim here is not to go through centralized bodies, but rather avoid it and have an ecosystem where these things happen organically. And perhaps thinking that a reputation system alone would be sufficient for this, perhaps that is a naive idea. This is something that perhaps needs to be tested out first. So yeah, I'm currently struggling with the same question as well. So thank you.
Hi. Thanks for an inspiring talk. And my question is about social media. So it is known that they promote like stories filled with emotions, fear and anger, and people also are kind of walled off and they don't really like meet in person. So they are not afraid to say some things that like hurtful things. And do you think that social media might be, or are you concerned they might be counterintuitive for an initiative like yours?
I think that having a moderator is very important. So just as discussed before, I think I mentioned that having a moderator to establish rules of the conversation, to establish that there is no, there's focusing on the future and no blaming and insulting the other, and having a constructive conversation is very important for these interactions. That's for sure. So when it comes to group interactions, there will need to be a moderator who is volunteering to be an ambassador for that kind of initiative.
How would you measure the health of a conversation?
Reviews. There will be hopefully silent watchers watching as well and giving overview. So also this is work in progress, so we'll have to see how different implementations can work out. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
What role do you think that cryptocurrencies are going to have in the future with conflict resolution? Because if we defund the governments, then these wars will hopefully stop on their own.
That would be quite a radical step for sure. Well, let's see. We can see how it played out in Venezuela, having the economic collapse there and the political collapse as well. Bitcoin saving many lives for people. So perhaps in conflict zones where people have maybe a lot less opportunity to turn to, and then cryptocurrencies are a good option and a safe option. So I think that when it comes to, well, defunding governments, I think there's a long way to go until something like that happens. But if such a collapse does occur, then there will be an alternative for people to turn to.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, there was a question.
Hello, thank you for being here today. My question is directly on your personal opinions. You were talking a lot about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. What do you see as a reason for the entire conflict, and do you see a solution to it? And also the last thing is, you were talking about the debate when Israelis and Palestinians were talking together and finding the solution. Do you actually believe that what they are establishing there could have an influence on like the overall solution if it will get ever resolved? Like, do you think they are truly able to change the solution?
If any of the Israelis in the room want to contribute, feel free. What? No. Okay, that's a very complicated question, and I don't think I'm in the position to establish the truth of the cause of the Palestinian conflict. It's a dirty history and a series of unfortunate events and claims to many things. So, second part of the question was what? I think what I've heard, I didn't grow up there myself, so I have a bit of an outsider's view, but from going back and being there, I've heard a lot of people say there's no way this conflict is gonna last. It will be over within our lifetime. And that was something that gave me a lot of hope because I can't imagine it ending the way things are going, but things move fast, and speaking to people like Rami and like Sapir and putting the effort in, and it does make you realize that this can't go on forever. It's very unsustainable for everyone involved. So, well, we'll see what happens after these elections. So, yeah.
Okay, so last chance. I see the hand right over there.
Thank you very much for the talk. Very interesting and inspiring. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or even recommendations on the consumption side of media, because we kind of have even social media or blogs, something like that, where we suddenly can listen to people from the other side, which is often problematic, and we meet people like you, Rami, in this case. Do you have any recommendations or thoughts on that in general?
Recommendations on platforms which offer direct communication?
Yes, or like probably even getting away from like the main media, but listening more, trying to find more people on social media on the other side.
There's plenty of initiatives and groups. I mean, just on Facebook, there's already a lot of groups with Israelis and Palestinians meeting, and Arab Palestinians and Israelis together. There's also an initiative called Skype with Your Enemy, which is also very much on the similar kind of lines. So that is literally just having a Skype conversation with someone on the other side of the border. And that's something that Rami was also involved in. So yes, once you look into it, there's plenty of, as you mentioned, there's a lot of blogs. Perhaps I can send you a few links. And that's the thing. These conversations are happening. The Salam Talk application in itself is not innovative in that way. People are talking. What I'm hoping to provide is a platform for providing high quality conversations and for allowing other people to tune into these conversations as well, and create an ecosystem in which people can feel free to express themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we ran out of time, so this was the last question. So I'd like to thank you, Inbar, for delivering your presentation. I would like to thank also the audience for staying with us. And as you see, and actually from all of your questions, when you were like so thankful to this presentation, it's just the moment when you realize that it's very important in these times to work with journalists, to work with information, and to find a way how to fight the not just fake, but everything what's there, and hopefully the conflict will be history soon. So thank you
so much. Thanks.